Hello, gentlemen. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I believe this is the first time the three of you have been in the same room for a little while, or theoretical room. So thanks for showing up. I figure we just start with a little bit of the story for anyone who doesn't know about how this came to be. So maybe Dan, if you want to jump in, how you guys all know each other, and maybe a little bit of the story of when we approached Al with the business and how we came to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I can kick things off. So I mean, I think as a lot of the viewers know, David and I have known each other for sort of 20 plus years now, going all the way back to the late 90s for anyone who was still alive around that time. We've been in touch ever since, and sort of remained in communication about various business ideas. I think I'll probably hand it over to Dave, because he was the one that that really ran into Al about 4 or 5 years ago now I think.
Yeah, I think it was about 5 years ago in the toy fair in Hong Kong. I attend these shows once a year in Hong Kong, which is a major where all the toys and license moguls get together. And I think I walked past another booth and I saw Al, and basically straight away after his meeting, I tapped in and showed us that Al, great to see you. At first sight, Al couldn't remember, and I went through, back in the trading card days. So we got reconnected, and I was telling Al, what I was up to. I'm wanting to build this digital idea of digital collectible, this NFT industry that we're in, using the blockchain. I think at first sight he was slightly puzzled, but I think Al was excited because he said, write me an email. So we've been, ever since being reconnected much deeper. And Al, as you know of, he's an advisor in the company. He's ahead of our licensing, helping us connecting with all the knowledge he has built over the years. He started in, I'll let Al take away where he started and how we got here today.
Oh, thank you, David. I think there's a funny story that David, that I actually remembered, that when I first started out, which is obviously a long time ago, I was a kids buyer, I was a toy buyer for a major department store chain, and I traveled the world literally on an all-inclusive world ticket. They gave me an all-inclusive world ticket. I was about 25. I'd start in New York and I'd go to the West Coast and see Mattel and everybody else, then move out to Asia, move out to Europe, come back around. So it was going about 8 weeks. And in that period, I saw, certainly all the different variables relative to how the toy business was working in terms of manufacturing, et cetera. But so one of my travels, after I left that particular company, I went to a company called Coleco Industries, and I became head of their toy division. And I was starting to look at the video game business. I'm talking about now going back in the early 80s, looking at the games that were coming in the coin-op business, right? So the coin-op business, I tracked it and came as though it was coming out of Japan. So I went to Japan and started to, schmooze with all the companies that were doing that. And one of the companies that I became very close to was Nintendo. So after I left Coleco, I started my own company, which was called 4Kids Entertainment. And I got all the rights to Nintendo as one of my first clients in terms of licensing. At that point, obviously, we were showing everything that they were working on. And I'd go to Japan once every 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And in one of my travels, I saw these kids playing a game called Pocket Monsters. And we saw that in the streets. The kids were collecting the cards and they were playing the game. And I obviously didn't speak Japanese, so I had our people explain to me what this was. It was a card game and a role-playing game, which was, very little action, more along the lines of almost like you read something and you enter in a verbal answer to what's going on. Found out that Nintendo was one of the owners of that particular concept. So after 1.5 years of negotiation, I got the rights worldwide to Pocket Monsters. and of course had the opportunity of bringing it out to the rest of the world. Changed the name, of course, right away because we didn't like the name Pokemon. And then we came up with a whole marketing plan, which involved the toys, the television shows, which we produced, a myriad of other things all intertwined. But the funny bit was, so I had these card rights. So I needed card distributors, and I had gotten a letter from David saying that he knows a lot about the card industry, and would love to think about having Pokemon cards. I didn't know him. I didn't know how old he was. This is where the story takes a turn for the bizarre. And but the letter was impressive. I thought he really understood what the business model was. So we gave him the rights to distribute Pokemon cards in, I guess, Jay, was it Australia and New Zealand, right?
Yeah, back in the day. And I think it was about 97, 98, no, 99, around that era. Yeah.
And he did great. And of course, after we got Pokemon, we got Yu-Gi-Oh! And David got Yu-Gi-Oh! Now here.
That was a great one.
Yeah. Fast forward, I don't have Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! David still does.
Yes, so we still sell them in our shops everywhere. Still going strong.
And the funny bit was, so I found out when we first licensed David, he was probably 17, 18, 19 years old. So serial entrepreneur, did a great job with the cards. And so that was how we got connected at that point in time. So that's a quick story. But again, as I said, I went on to start 4Kids. I got Nintendo. Then I realized, when you look at television, sometimes you see things and you wonder what's happening to them. I remember the popularity of wrestling in the late 90s. And yet there was no licensing. So I called up Vince McMahon at WCW, or that time it was WWF rather, and I got the rights to World Wrestling Federation, and I ended up getting rights to a myriad of other things that represented James Bond. We represented all kinds of things. But one of the things that we loved was to build the brands. We loved to build the brands. So I remember there was a company called SRO Pace that was doing something called Monster Truck Racing, if you remember this, right? And Monster Truck Racing had a couple of stars. One was Bigfoot and one was, I think, Gravedigger. And I said to them, why don't we license these trucks? Why don't we go to the licensors and ask them to pay for the truck? In exchange, we will tour the truck around the country, and we'll have merchandising rights where whatever we do is the picture of the truck, right? As opposed to a character. Well, we got every license under the sun. We got Marvel, we got Nintendo, we had this thing now, it's called Monster Jam, and it tours the country all the time. And but it's very fun because you have now these character trucks who are sort of battling each other. So that was exciting. Polly Pockets, which of course we did that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. Matter of fact, not to brag, but what the hell? Out of the top 10 historical successes in the kids business, we have 6 of them.
Wow.
So that's not bad. Now, of course, I think in the top 10 of historical referencing and everything, we're going to have 7 because we're going to have VEVE too. Be part and parcel of VEVE as well.
That's pretty incredible. So when you're looking at these properties and you're traveling the world and finding this IP, is there something universal that you're looking for when you're assessing them? Is there sort of a checklist that you go through, or is it on a case-by-case basis?
I think what we do is we like to see if something is popular somewhere. It's very difficult to take something that is not known in any way, shape, or form, or the play pattern is not known, and then try and build that from scratch. So I always like to find something that had a little bit of success, or maybe a lot of success, maybe in a very diminutive way. So an example of that, I was reading the Wall Street Journal one day, and I saw this article about a guy in Cleveland, Georgia. Cleveland, Georgia is 2 hours outside of Atlanta. It is really, a strange place. Really a strange place. And this guy was selling or adopting out dolls on a location called Babyland General Hospital in Cleveland, Georgia. Well, I read this story and went, wait a second, I have to go see this. Flew down to see him, and he had bought an old doll hospital, like an old like a real hospital that was from the 1880s, and put his handmade dolls in different settings in that hospital. And you get a tour with a nurse, and at the end of the time, they want to know, would you like to adopt a little person from Babyland General Hospital for $500? And people were doing it. And I went, and in the middle of this whole store, or they had a Cabbage Patch where the dolls' heads were coming out of the Cabbage Patch. So I asked them, what's that about? And they said, well, that's where we think babies come from. They come from cabbages. So right away, I hit on Cabbage Patch Kids and made a deal. Trust me, it wasn't very easy to launch this thing. We made one-of-a-kind dolls. We did $1,800,000,000 in 3 years.
Wow.
It was pretty amazing. So we're looking for things that A, have a point of difference, B, there's some success somewhere. And also, I think there's also something that maybe was done previously that we could do a little better. But there was always some connection to something. Look, VEVE is, the thing that the VEVE was so important to me was it's collectibles. It's really collectibles, but it's really, when you look at David's collection, which is, holy shit, excuse my French, but it's like unbelievable. And then you look at, how much money is spent on collectibles. And yet, so to me, looking at VEVE was, well, why can't there be another way of collecting besides the traditional way of buying a physical element? And David did a really good job, I think, on explaining the fact that, everything had gone digital at some point in time, whether it be records, whether it be albums, whether it be trading cards. There's a whole litany of digital situations. And I loved he and Dan's thought process that we're not going to make flat collectibles. We're not going to make, a two-dimensional flat collectible. We're going to do something really different in augmented reality, 3D. So I felt they had an idea. They really had an idea. And so I was really intrigued by that idea.
Yeah, right. David, I would love to see the email that you sent to Al the second time around
Yeah. And I think Al goes, you come to New York, come over, see me, and we talk over. And I think there was quite a few number of, swapping email back and forward. And I think Al was going, how could you own a digital collectibles? And, popping over to New York, explaining, and I think I met up with Al a couple more times in Las Vegas. He had a huge booth at Vegas licensing, and that was really the start of it. And, we worked on a checklist, what we like, and it definitely was one of the hardest thing, I think, in licensing, to convince licensors that this digital collectible is going to take off. I think, with myself and Dan, we're definitely going to look at putting a book together, a little Netflix mini series. We every meeting we went, we took photos, we did a little bit of filming, we talked about it. And there's almost times that myself and Dan walk out of the room, we're just going, did they get it? Are they understanding it? What the user today sees in the VEVE app, this has been a really long time in the making. When I literally say we started in 2017, we did, for 4 years, over 4 years with zero income, one ambition, and one dream, myself and Dan. And, with Dan, Al's help, we pretty much knock on every door. Al, I think there's days that your PA had to ring up some of these licensors, 3, 4, 5 times even in space of 24 hours just to get a meeting. And I think even when we left, they're still going, well, is this real? I mean, are these guys just dreamers or what? And I let Dan talk a little bit about, our experience in this.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, there were times it was just so frantic. Dave, I remember times where we're basically on the way to, big licensor meetings, super busy, got my laptop literally in the back of the Uber, finishing the presentation right before we arrive. But no, I mean, yeah, it was very, very interesting. In the beginning, as Dave mentioned, people sort of like digital it was very new back then. No one really sort of understood what it was. Obviously now everyone knows what an NFT is. And I think it was really just, came down to the fact that, Al had so many good connections in the world of licensing, given that, a lot of the people that we were talking to had, previously worked underneath Al and really saw Al as like as an inspiration, and he really kind of kicked them off on their career.
Yeah, I remember we're in Vegas. We have to walk from one end of the hall to the other end for another meeting. And it's often we will be stopped at 5-6 times, Al. People just jumping out and go, "Hey, Al, haven't seen you for a while." Just the caliber that Al's put the weights behind to help this project. And, we really want our audience to understand that this business is truly unique. It has multiple moving parts. You got your normal business admin, you got your technology aspect. Inside the app, it lives in this ecosystem with multiple different, you got social aspect, you got the digital aspect, you got the AR, you got, how the whole back end of blockchain transact. And then you have the token side of the business, then you have the licensing, and so on. There's a whole lot. We almost like a studio. Every week we are trying to come up with beautiful content and present ourselves like a TV studio. When we go live, and it's amazing. We have products that sells out in literally in minutes or sometimes in seconds, and this is all part of carefully orchestrating it. And Al has been one of the most key instrumental in the business, because we really believe that, it's not just normal content, it's about premium content, and that's what we're about. And, Al, maybe talk a little bit about what premium content, what's good, how do people, collectors like to see?
That's a great point. I was, like I said, Deb was correct that initially we'd walk into these meetings, and of course, we were trying to get the most important brands, because I believe, and David and Dan believed, you can't start off with, you have to start off with really a great selection of brands, because ultimately, and initially, those brands have to define you, right? And eventually you define that brand. But initially you have to have those brands. So going in, talking to the presidents of Warner Brothers and presidents of, CBS and all the other people, trying to get them to understand this. But I think once they started to get a little bit more of a flavor text on it, they realized that we weren't going to sell flat art. We weren't going to sell a it's funny, I like to call them, I have a new name for them. They're AFTs. They're action, action tokens. They're not, non-fungible. They're action fungible tokens. Because they do something. And there was, the whole definition of what this thing was. I think there was a lot of confusion about the blockchain, because again, there was so much noise about the blockchain, but yet what we had to tell them was, and David and Dan did a great job, was the blockchain is just a way of keeping score and protecting these things. It's not what this is. What it really is a world where you're going to collect things that you, A, are interested in, B, that are unique relative to the system, and C, may have some value additionally down the road because of the limitation, how many they're going to be and how many are going to be actually, dropped at any given point in time. But I think you look at the marketplace today in NFTs, everybody who's jumped in, a lot of them have jumped in with just, I think, kind of subpar products because of the nature of the not taking the time that Dan and David did in terms of how do you program, how do you build these models to create this, augmented reality. And I think that's the point of difference. When we talk about premium content, it's also premium delivery. So you have to have a combination of those two. And there's a great story, because a lot of these things that we have a great story, a great pedigree, the DeLorean from Back to the Future, or, things of that ilk, which unto themselves have a great entertainment value. And all of a sudden here you can have that DeLorean in your collection, even though you don't, so I think there's a whole tie-in with the story. There's a tie-in with the fact that this is what people love. And I think, we haven't even touched the surface yet. I mean, I think and David and Dan and I talk about it all the time, there's so many different opportunities in this marketplace. Question is, how do you do them all, and how fast can you do them? Because you have so many, obviously, brands that we currently have. But I give guys tremendous credit, because I know they remind me of, I'll tell you, they remind me of, I never told David and Dan this, they remind me of the guys that ran Nintendo. They were samurai warriors. There's no question about it. They would kill you and eat you. But they were, one thing they were totally committed to was quality, the quality of the gameplay, the quality of the experience. And I think so many people in a rush to get to market, and whether it be video games, I can remember the ET video game, that worked out real well. But these guys never rush anything that's not right. It's not 100% ready to go. And I think the licensors appreciate that, because it shows how much they care about their products. But also, the consumer knows anything that drops on VEVE is going to be a quality, well thought out experience, not just a non-fungible token.
Yeah, Dan, I remember, in those months leading up to the launch of VEVE, obviously people were getting pretty impatient, because there weren't many things we could actually reveal at that point until the platform went live. And I remember people used to ask, why haven't you released a minimum viable product? Why don't you just roll something out for us to test and then come to it? But at that time, that's exactly the tack that we took. I remember you saying we don't want to release something that isn't of the most premium quality that it can be. It's a testament to the product as well. So look, Al, a little earlier you alluded to Cabbage Patch Kids, and the way that our community operates, they see everything that gets posted. So they saw in your LinkedIn a while ago that you were comparing the early success of VEVE to the early successes you saw with Pokemon and Cabbage Patch Kids. Do you want to dive into that a little bit more? What is it that you've seen so far with VEVE that reminds you of those properties? And what potential do you think that this platform has to really disrupt this industry?
Well, I think I gave that a lot of thought, because I think it's a great question. All three of those properties have a lot in common. The initial reaction upon presentation was like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, trust me, I couldn't give away Pokemon. No one wanted it. When I took Cabbage Patch Kids to Toys R Us, the president of Toys R Us says, you mean to tell me you're going to give us one-of-a-kind dolls, and if I want to order more blondes, I can't order the blondes? I said, right. Every time you get a shipment, it'll be a new shipment of dolls. Well, we thought we were out of our mind. I think some of the meetings that David and Dan and I walked out of, I think that was some of the questions that were, how crazy were we? But so I think that had some of a synergy there. But the other thing too, when we started to test some of this stuff, and we have ways of testing, doing a market test, which with VEVE, of course, we did a market test. Obviously, David did and Dan did a closed share of these properties so people could look at it. But when we started showing people a Pokemon trailer, this is a crazy story. I couldn't get the television show on the air. No one wanted it. So I decided I was going to syndicate it myself, because I had a syndication company. So I syndicated it in 200 markets at 6 o'clock in the morning, just like we're doing here. David and Dan at 6 o'clock, whatever time it is there. That's the worst time you could possibly put a kid show on. I mean, who's up there at 6 o'clock in the morning? After about 2 weeks, we started getting calls from the stations saying that more kids are watching this show at 6 o'clock in the morning than are watching the block that comes on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is their key block. So I said right away, something's cooking here. Something is happening. We ran a little ad in Macy's for Cabbage Patch Kids after putting up a window of a display that replicated Babyland General Hospital, I get a call from the buyer. They ran an ad on Sunday, on Macy's, and I got a call Monday morning, and I'm thinking, okay, this is not good. What's he calling me? Al, we got a real problem. We sold 500 dolls the first day, and we have another 1,000 rain checks. And this is in Macy's, which is not Toys R Us. So we knew right away something had hit a nerve. Well, we knew right away with Pokemon that something had hit a nerve with that television show. We knew that VEVE had hit a nerve because the number of, you read the social media posts about it, and you read the fact when they first started doing some drops, that it would go in literally, you know, as David said, it could go in a minute, go in less than a minute. So we knew there was something really elegant about that. So when I posted, I felt there was a great synergy between the two of them. The three of them is because they all were showing this extraordinary degree of success, not in the numbers, but just in the intensity of the demand, right? The intensity of people who got interested in Pokemon, got interested in VEVE, got interested in Cabbage Patch Kids was immense. And I think we're seeing the same thing, you know, happen now. So that's the reason why I posted. And let me tell you a story. I'll give you a little. We are now involved with Cabbage Patch again. Not that David is, but I'm working on it. You follow? But we're looking at Cabbage Patch Kids for other things as well. But certainly one of them is what we're talking about here. So there's a lot of I think synergy, and I think great things don't appear to be great right away. Because they're so strange that people sort of, you know, have a different, you know, psyche about them. You know, it's like, is this going to be any good? You know, is this not going to be any good? So I think these things have that similar quality. You know, Ninja Turtles, same story. I mean, it's just you can go on and on and on of things that when people first saw them, they weren't so thrilled. But eventually, when you get them to the right audience, you get the right thing out there, and you get that audience responding, then it gives you a sense of where you are in terms of how this thing's going to go.
So we've got that intensity, you know, when we first hit the market, but maybe David or Dan, do you think that people understand the value propositions of digital collectibles yet? I mean, or are we still too early for that? I know that our audience is quite concentrated and has come across with that NFT hype that we saw earlier in the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the, you know, we really do have more and more of a mix of, you know, the NFT sort of fans, and then, you know, we every day we see more and more fans coming in from the more collectible side. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we are, you know, we're really haven't really created anything new. We're just basically tapping into something that really is fundamental with humans. You know, we love to collect. Even, you know, I think I've mentioned before, back in the caveman day, you know, like you'd collect, you know, pretty stones or something that you'd find. So in a way, collecting is really inherent in, you know, in who we are as humans. So yeah, I really believe that, you know, as VEVE gets more exposure and we get, you know, more traction out there in probably the non-NFT market, you know, that we're still really hitting a nerve of what people love, which is basically just collecting. But this is in a really cool new kind of way.
David, being so plugged into the physical world of collecting, are you finding that physical collectors are making the transition? I mean, how does that work in your network of people? Is the conversation already taking place?
Yeah. You know, the major part about collecting is, but most people don't even know they collect things. But the truth is, everyone somewhere, somehow they collect shoes, you know, handbags, any toy, things that you grew up that you remember. And one of the biggest trend that we have seen is that the property that we bring out, and I think Reese, Dan will agree even now, some of these property are retro property, like Back to the Future, you know, Ghostbusters. You know, the kids born, you know, let's say in the 2000s, they probably won't get it because they've never seen it, they didn't grow up with it. But it's interesting how much, you know, these, you know, a lot of our audience are that age group, you know, between the 22 to the 45, 48. They grew up with that. Now they have kids, they have family. So they're showing them, you know, what they grew up with and try to get them involved, become a talking topic. You know, there are two type of group, which is quite separated, and why we had built this app. We understand there's Instagram out there, which is all about, you know, new latest hype. You got Twitter, the one line, you know, message. You got LinkedIn for business people. You got Facebook for photos, for photo sharing, news sites, you got TikTok, a lot of these music people go on. But what we have found a niche for VEVE is that we cover the fandom. You know, it's every year I go to Comic-Con, we have toy game shows everywhere I travel to as a store retailer, and I see fans dress up. They dress up to celebrate these events. They dress up as a Batman, Wonder Woman, they take a selfie, and on a Monday, they go back to work. People don't know, you know, over the weekend they were dressing up their favorite cosplay characters. And then why they want to do that is because it's deepen what they do, and they click all these. And the collectibles doesn't just really stop me and you. I mean, we have seen institutions, banks, you know, these hedge funds are buying these comic books, you know, first edition action comic. I know a couple of major bankers up in Asia, they buy these collectibles as another, you know, tangible asset. And, you know, speaking to some of my friends who's in the industry of collecting, I show them what we're doing and they really do get it. They just didn't have an idea how will someone perceive that value and how that premium will come out. And I think with VEVE, as we go more and more in depth with this NFT industry we're in, and as long as we keep coming up with greater and better experience, that collectible will be more and more valuable and more collectibles. And this is one of the reasons why we stress is that we break them down in seasons. We have seen very early success of our season 1 collectibles. Some of these are fetching very high price in the resale market. And what we don't want is new collectors coming in feel they are missing out. They go, oh my God, this has been priced out, my range. So we break them down in piecemeal in a way. So if you halfway through season 2, you still have the ability to collect some of the commons. And, you know, unfortunately, everything's almost sold out. I mean, we have 2 or 3 other collectibles, and we just want them to start with one. And the idea is to get them in and give them that experience. A lot of them, as you've seen, when you have one collectible in the showroom, it's pretty empty, pretty lonely for some of these. And slowly you get collectors collecting them. There are collectors out there collecting edition numbers. There's collectors out there collecting seasons. There's collectors out there just collecting Batmans or their superhero, what they want. And there are collectors out there just want one of every VEVE collectibles. And we really believe that we have created nothing much new. What we have created is just that fandom, that experience of the new way of collecting. And this was touched on many times in our other podcasts with Dan covering, you know, to our pitch to people. We haven't created anything very new. All these properties live around us, and we just give them a very easy access through mobile.
I think the point that David raises, I think there's an interesting side dichotomy to this. When you think about it, and you go to Comic-Con, which always strikes me as the most unbelievable place where these people are carrying reams of products. I mean, but big products. You know, David's probably there dragging out pictures and dragging out, you know, other things. And I always thought to myself, where do you put all this stuff? Where do you put it? And now there's a way to put it someplace. You know, think about, you know, it sounds crazy, but VEVE doesn't take up any physical space, right? So you could have a collection that is, you know, thousands of products, and yet it's not have been forcing you to live in your, you know, your family room because your bedroom is full of stuff. I mean, it sounds funny, but it also gives you the ability to take it with you if you want to share that. And I'm sure down the road, you know, I'm not going to give away any secrets, but under when you start seeing what else is being evolved, you're going to get inside that app. You're going to take your friends inside that app. You're going to be able to actually have experiences, which if you did that in a real environment, you'd have to have a theater or a warehouse. So I think that's a funny bit, but especially if you think about, you know, Asia, Japan, China, you know, big cities where they live in apartments. So I think there's a lot of this consolidation that you can get with VEVE and still not lose the essence of what you're trying to do.
David, you touched on just a moment ago, the importance of expanding on that experience and layering it in and continuing to provide the best sort of products and experience with that. Do you guys want to give some insight into, the next layers of VEVE and sort of how we're going to continue to build that in?
I mean, at the end of the day, we just need to continue to focus on the fact that we are, we're creating a collectible product. And, sometimes that doesn't mean, just layering on feature after feature after feature. It's really about focusing on what that core experience is around, collectability and getting the brands that you want and really just having a really good time. But in saying that, obviously, now that we're in the digital space and people have the opportunity to effectively collect from their hand, it allows us to do a whole lot of other really cool things, like Al touched on. Now you can, through VEVE, you can have this massive sweeping showroom displaying all your collectibles that you never would be able to have. Well, never say never, but it'd be a lot more difficult to do that kind of thing in the real world. So in terms of the layering, really the features that we bring out in the app and, around the experience is really we always try to hark back to what that, the core fundamental of what we're doing, which is really just, allowing people to collect the items that they want.
Another point here that I think I'd like to just drive into. There are really things that you could never have except digitally. And what's that mean? Well, it means, for instance, the guy just sold the code for the original internet, program for $5 million, right? $5.2 million. But there's a lot of things like that David and Dan and I are thinking about, in some cases have acquired, which are really fascinating event experiences that you could never in a million years own. You couldn't own it because, number one, there's only one of them. And number two, they would be so expensive that you'd never be able to have that. So it's like, think about if you have a Picasso print, you have a Picasso print and the Picasso is $100 million, but the print by itself is still worth, $150,000. Well, think about that kind of layering with regard to physical objects or physical experiences. I mean, we've identified a whole slew of things that we're now in process of trying to acquire that can be really fabulous because they are so rare and they are so unique and they are so interesting. So there's a whole litany of things we can do.
Yeah. The rarity and the scarcity, obviously, from the collectible side is one of our value propositions to be able to provide with a digital asset now. But also as a platform to be able to bring so many brands and different properties into one place to amass that collector's market is quite unique as well, or at least we've really cornered that section of the market. But we're also seeing VEVE become a brand unto itself. Has this always been, was that expected as part of this journey? Was it part of the strategy to establish VEVE as a brand, as well as providing all of these properties?
I mean, I think that whenever you start off a business like this, you always have a desire to, make your product or your brand, very, very well known. But, I think as I've touched on in previous videos, it would be 6-7 months ago. I mean, even I think when we were up at Al's place in New York and we're sitting there thinking, will people even like it? We like it, but will other people like it? So, I mean, I think, for me personally, I just think it's great that, the reason VEVE is becoming a bit more well-known is because, we're really moving into a very, very new space and we're getting a lot of traction. And I think, again, that just comes back to the collectability of everything that we're doing and, tapping into that core drive that people have just to collect and own things. So, I mean, really excited to see where it goes. Obviously, as business owners, we hope that the brand will become, synonymous, but still early days, but very positive so far.
Another important thing, just to touch on that the boys and I spent a lot of time on, was the name. When you think about products and brands, how important is the name? And not necessarily does the name represent anything specifically, but is it memorable? Is it something that people will be, will be saying, what the heck is that? And I think about those names, whether it be Cabbage Patch Kids, whether it be Pokemon, whether it be, Ninja Turtles. And I remember David said to me, how I want a 2-syllable name. Thanks, David. That helps. And so we went through, I don't know how many hundreds of names. And then we came up with the idea, with some of my people, that maybe, it's an alliteration of something, like it meant something else. In this case, was it a virtual experience or a virtual enterprise, right? So that's where you got, so they got the VEVE. Then I found out that VEVE is a Haitian witchcraft word, which nailed it for me. If I point, when I said that's it, that's the name. And when I said it to Dan and to David, they went, that's the name. That's the name. So there's this little mystique about it, but I think it's an easy name to remember, like Google. Who would have thought Google, would have become the name that it is? So obviously the brand built the name, certainly, but here in case, the brand is building the name, but the name is a great name. And naming is really critical in anything you do.
And all credit to I think we spend about 9 or 10 months coming up the name. We'll be going back to Al's place over the span of 10 months, and every time Al goes, okay, what can I do to help here today? And we'll go, oh, well, we need a name for this product we're doing. And one of the main reasons is the word Ecomi was trademarked. We actually got a letter to tell us to take it down because there's other pharmaceutical companies uses that for their instrument. And then is going, oh my God, I need to come up 2-syllable. And obviously all the domains, the best names with short letters are all taken out. So, huge credit to Al on this one. We knew he will come up with a great name and also a name that we could register and trademark around the world was something that was quite important. And all these name was kept in secret until all these trademark was passed through. Myself and Dan, and this is why Dan appears more on camera, is because every time I'm on camera, I somehow will leak something by mistake. So I'm pinching myself now. The minute I go beyond that, I just pinch myself. So shut up. We couldn't announce the name. Where there was so much stuff that we couldn't tell the audience, the brands that we're working with, the image, what's going to be the first release, down to what it looks like, the whole thing. So, we had to work almost in secrecy to get this to reality. And over that period of time was very hard because you see other projects, in the NFT world, just trucking along, putting out news, people sharing it, it's on CoinMarketCap, it's on this, Bitcoin.com, it's on every website, and me and them just go, oh my God, I hope one day we'll be mentioned somewhere, because there was just so much news. Well, people almost think me and Dan is dead, they didn't even hear from us.
Yeah, and now it's everywhere.
Another thing that I think is important that Dan and David did, I'll use an example. So many people sometimes will start to hype a product, quite a way away from its actual launch, right? And the idea, they think the idea is to create some buzz around that particular idea. Well, there's certain ideas that it's hard to create buzz around because you have to see them. You have to hold them. When you say hold them, that's a funny word. You have to see them. And I think, I look at the Apple model. Apple doesn't show anything until it's shipping. They make an announcement on a new iPhone. That new iPhone's in the stores, a week or 10 days later. I think this is what's great about VEVE. They don't overpromise. Then they don't have to worry about under delivering, and that whatever they do it, and then they drop it, and then you see it. And I think that's really an important marketing position, because I've seen so many companies where they talk about how great their products are and look how good this is going to be, and then bingo, the thing comes out and A, it doesn't represent what they were talking about, or B, it's just a complete dud. So I think the idea of trying to get all your ducks in line, the expression that David and I use, you don't shoot the ducks unless they're flying. If I point, and if there's no flying ducks, don't shoot at them. Don't shoot at them, because you're not going to get it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. For the first 2.5 years in the community, Dan's directive was literally to squash the hype before until the product was ready, you know, and people used to scream it at me and why aren't we promoting this? And for exactly that reason, you know, you want to make sure that the product is ready before we roll it out. That will always be a pretty fun memory for me. But look, I know we don't have too much time left, so I figure we maybe just paint a bit of a picture of the future. We obviously have a lot coming in the next few months, let alone the next few years. So, I mean, to each of you, maybe we'll start with you, Al. What are you the most excited about moving forward with VEVE? Is there a moment in time you think, you know, there'll be a transitional period where we can kind of, you know, pat ourselves on the back?
No,
Okay.
no, because when you do that, you're dead. You know, because the moment that you think you're really great is the moment somebody comes and slaughters you.
Yeah.
You know, it's an old story about, do you want to be, you know, are you committed or are you involved, right? And so you take the case of bacon and eggs, right? I like to talk the story. The chicken is involved, the pig is committed, right? Because of obviously where you are. So to me, this is a commitment that has to continue to roll. You know, my own dream for VEVE, which is just my dream, is that VEVE becomes a marketplace for a lot of things. And not just, you know, digital collectibles, but it could be experiences. There's a whole litany of things that VEVE could represent that can offer to a collectible universe. It's not limited to just digital collectibles. It could be movies, it could be television shows, it could be, you know, all kinds of things that are collectible, but aren't necessarily not just, but in addition to what we're doing currently. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of exciting things, like I said, that we've identified that, you know, that I think are going to be fun. But I think I see this as a real lifestyle brand. And it's like, you know, when somebody said this is the Netflix of digital collectibles, I think we're far greater than that. I think we're far greater than that. I think we have a much more, we're the Walmart of digital collectibles, because we're going to have more things and more stuff, and, you know, and more ability to present things to you than you have in a big store. So I think, you know, that's my hope.
Amazing. I'm sure that's about to become a new community meme too, just so you're aware. David, do you have?
I mean, we as I always say to everyone, we really just starting. Myself and Dan, we are busier than ever. You know, we just now need to look at all the other opportunity that we have. Hundreds of, you know, other brands, contacts in different field, all reaching out to us. I mean, we were talking to some of the largest companies yesterday with technology, providing how to enhance the experience. Myself, what I'm looking for most to it is, obviously we have a big commitment with this Marvel release coming out, and hopefully by end of this year. And that commitment with that experience is really going to drive huge adoption. Our job is to ensure that our teams, we have enough staff and resource to make this happen, because now we got big corporation expecting, you know, us to navigate and taking and leading these new industry into it. So I'm very excited in every aspect, but my biggest thing is all about experience. You know, what will a collector want to collect if it wasn't digital? What will make them want to not just purchase it, but to share it, to, you know, to brag about it? I mean, I often still pick up the comics books I have signed by Stan Lee or Jim Lee, all these people who draw my memorable superhero that, you know, when I grew up. And what makes that product want people to show it off. And that's what we want to continue for my aspiration side of thing. And then what about yourself?
Yeah, big question. I mean, I guess above and beyond the, you know, the actual experience itself, which, you know, both Dave and Al have touched on, which, you know, the experience for us is the key thing. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, NFT, you know, gaming technologies, AR, all of that stuff is just technology behind the scenes, which anybody could pick up. But, you know, being able to form all of that into experience that someone loves, is really what the kind of the key is. And then, as Dave mentioned, you know, to really get that collectability out of it. I mean, I guess, you know, some of the things that I've mentioned in previous videos that, you know, my aspirations for the future, you know, very much, I really believe that, you know, wearables of some form are going to come out the next 3 to 5 years. And, you know, when you do have these wearables on, and by wearables, I mean like AR glasses or something similar, you know, what do you see in the world around you? You see digital items. And while there will be, you know, free stuff, cheap stuff, like there is in the real world now, there will also be digital items that are very rare and very coveted and very valuable. So yeah, I think we're really at a crossroad now of you know, really starting to transition into the digital world. And yeah, Ready Player One.
Yeah, that's definitely the vision. David, have you got time for one more, or do you need to?
Sorry, I do need to duck off. I have a huge meeting. But
No.
yeah, you guys can carry on.
Yeah, no problem at all. We might touch on a couple more things if that's the case.
All right. I'll just say thanks to all our audience. See you. I'll have a good rest.
So just you know, we've alluded to it a fair bit, Dan, and maybe Al, you have some input on this. Obviously, the next iteration of our platform will dive into the VEVE-verse and this idea of the metaverse. So I'm curious for both of you, but Al, do you see the metaverse style experience as the next evolution of this you know, digital adoption curve? Is that the future of this kind of industry now?
Well, I'm not certainly a technologist. I'm not a marketer, and so I have to leave that one to Dan.
Okay.
But what I see though is, again, the evolution of what people really want and were never able to get. That to me is really a important aspect. You know, it's one thing to be in an augmented reality state where you can just experience something that you would normally not experience. What about the actual ownership of something that in a million years you would never be able to get? And I wish I can give you examples, which I could, but I'm not. You know, things that they could be that. But Dan and I've had this conversation a lot about categories, about, you know, things of that ilk. So I think the idea that, you know, creating demand for something and then limiting it dramatically, you might have a very different, you know, set of parameters. I think the other thing that we haven't, you know, really, you know, seen yet is that the storytelling about these collectibles, where they come from, or what, you know, what was the background of it, etc. I think we're going to see that too as well. So I can't, you know, I'm very excited. I think the boys have done an incredible job. I wish they'd get a little more sleep. That would be helpful. But I think look, we can't let our guard down. We have to realize that every day, you know, how many hundreds of companies are coming into this field, you know, obviously. But I think we have, you know, we have something we can protect and grow.
Dan, anything to add to that?
I mean, no, I mean, Al summed it up very well, but I think just in terms of the, you know, the metaverse side of things, you know, really for me, I just see that as a natural evolution. As I just mentioned, you know, we really are on the precipice of moving into these, you know, much bigger digital worlds. I mean, you know, people play games, you know, 10 hours a day, purely existing in these digital realms. And I think we're about to see a shift from, you know, moving from, you know, gaming metaverses to, you know, to social metaverses. And for us, you know, like we've obviously got our showroom V1, showroom V2's coming out. And it's just really a natural extension on you know, the technology we have now, where we're going to go.
Yeah, it's I actually see that firsthand. You know, I have a little brother who's 12. I'm sitting in his chair at the moment, and I'm sure from the moment he wakes up, he's going to be on this computer playing games, you know, until the sun goes down. So that for me was a real aha moment, you know, when I actually got to see firsthand that the younger generations are just digitally native. That, you know, owning in-game items is very common to them. You know, they already attach so much value to those digital assets. So seeing that transition into ownable digital assets and then beyond is, well, it's really not a leap anymore. Whereas, maybe 10 years ago, that just wasn't part of the narrative, which is really important. And Al, you touched on, the storytelling there, which, is fundamental to the human experience, I think, because it helps us to attach meaning to these assets or the things that we're doing. Is there anything in particular about VEVE in its current iteration that you think is really helping to bridge that gap between the product and the fan or the collector? Is it, we obviously have the drop days and things like that. Like, is there something built in there or a connection that is really helping fans to find and enjoy the product?
Well, I think obviously when they do a drop, they give a fairly, significant understanding of why the drop, where it came from, what was the background of that drop. But I think ultimately there could be a lot more stories that are told that have a lot more nuance to them, especially, and then that makes the individual collectible that much more interesting because of the story. I think to Dan's point, not only will the technology grow, but the experience of being in the story, and then because you imagine owning a piece of the story,
yeah,
you really own it. And I think the game playing world allows the kids to own that. But we've always, I've been in the game business my whole life, so we've always talked about how does VEVE fit into the gaming environment, But I think there's a lot of ways that it does, and that those are ways that they're going to try and figure out how to do it with. But give me a big story, a big experience. Let me then. It's like that can convey it. Like you walk into a ride at Disney World, right? You walk into one of their major rides. When you go off the ride, what do you walk into? A gift shop, right? Well, this is the idea. We have a experience, and then all of a sudden, you don't walk into a gift shop. You walk into a showroom. You walk into a drop, and that experience you can take with you. I think that's the secret sauce down the road to some extent.
Interesting. Yeah, it's even from a merchandising point of view, I guess, to throw back to one of your earlier brands with Pokemon, you would see the show and fall in love with the characters, and then you could collect the cards or a part of the merchandise and take that with you. So, as we've alluded to, we're really just transitioning that onto a new digital medium, which opens us up to a lot. So it's going to be interesting to watch that progress, for sure. Now, Dan, I know we can't give everything away here, but what are we looking at in terms of our current user base? What are our projections or our goals there? And obviously the licensing or the brands coming on board will help us to expand that reach, but are there any particular growth strategies we have in place or that we'll be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, to date, we've had, over 350,000 downloads of the app, which is, very, very promising considering we're only, 5 or 6 months into the launch. And, obviously from our perspective, we want to get VEVE into the hands of as many users as we can possible. I mean, it is funny, I actually remember standing around the kitchen at Al's place, and we were talking about, how many users should we aim for in year one? And then we'd all talk about it, and we're thinking, okay, I think year one, in the first 12 months, we should be able to get 60,000 users. And then, by the end of year two, maybe we can get, 200,000 users. So, I mean, good thing is that all of those numbers have been completely blown out of the water. I think we're literally operating off our year three numbers at the moment. But yeah, I mean, with the uptake, obviously you never really know what's going to happen in the future. But I think the other thing to remember is that VEVE really hasn't started anything in terms of its marketing. Outside of our absolutely amazing community who literally, do so much work for us. So, you can anticipate in the future that we will, as we start bringing out these bigger drops like Marvel, there's going to be much bigger marketing campaigns around that. There's going to be longer lead times where, a few weeks out, you're going to start seeing ads or sneak peeks. And the whole idea is really just to, build up that audience and get the product in front of more potential users before it drops. So, I mean, I'm always a bit nervous about quoting numbers because, they'll end up everywhere across the internet, and then we'll get blamed if they don't come to fruition. But yeah, I think, based on the current growth to date, we can expect that to continue going.
I'll tell you a story because I like to always be conservative, and then you surprise by being better. I remember the kitchen table arguments about how many we're going to have. And now David and Dan, don't let me forget that I was the low guy. I was the low guy on that totem pole in terms of, I don't think that's way too many, for the first, period of time. Of course, now they've blown those numbers away. So I'm delighted, and certainly that's more suggestive as a question you asked previously. Or how do you know this is going to work?
Yeah. It's very indicative of the future of the platform, hopefully. And, nothing wrong with being conservative. I think that's a very safe play to make. So that's a good move. Now, we might just wrap it up with this last one, and I'll throw this to both of you. Now, Al, maybe we'll start with you. Obviously, you've had an incredible career in licensing and branding and things like that. And you're still very much involved. What advice do you have for anyone who's starting out, maybe in a new industry? They don't know what they want to do or how to achieve it. I mean, is there any sort of directive that you can give people that has helped you to expand your career?
I think the most important thing you can do is read everything you can get your hands on. Because I have found that some of the best ideas or the best thoughts I've ever experienced were little articles in the Wall Street Journal or the Times or in all these newspapers or magazines where there's a little blurb of a story. And all of a sudden, what is that? And because ultimately everything starts small. Everything starts small. So the more that you can acclimate yourself to that, the better off you are. And I think the second thing is, if you decide to do something, you better understand the market you're going into, understand who the competition is, understand what's been done in that market, because so many people will start a new business and have no clue who the competition is, no clue how well they've done or not done. So I think it's reading and homework, that really is important in trying to ascertain what you should do.
Sound advice, very sound advice. And Dan, I know that over the years that I've known you, we joke about your business game leveling up in the last few years. Any advice to people who are starting out or looking to pursue a passion business as it would be?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to second what Al said, that, really at the end of the day, a business is about offering something to someone else, whether it's a product or a service. So it is very important to, I think, two main things. Number one, understand where you can fit in that landscape if one exists already. And making sure that it is actually something that people want. I mean, I've started businesses where I was like, people are definitely going to buy that, and then they didn't buy it. So I'd made some wrong assumptions. I think secondly, when it comes to business, it really is all about tenacity. You just have to keep going. There's always that song that has always been a bit of an anthem to me, which is that one, I get knocked down, I get up again, because it literally, that is what it is like, if you want to succeed very well. And I think lastly, one of the important things is really just, the people around you and the people you choose to be involved with. I mean, that's a very, very important question. You need to make sure that the people who you do bring on board are bringing value, and they are contributing, and you all get along. And that's I think that's really very much a part of the secret sauce.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, thank you to both of you and to David. Also, my thanks to him later for being here. Everybody will really appreciate it. Any final words? Any cliffhangers you want to leave anyone with?
No.
Get on the app earlier, because you're going to get sold out much quicker than you think. So you better get on that app. Get on that. Get your finger on the button, especially this coming Thursday.
Absolutely.
See people training exercises. Yeah.
That's it. Thanks, gents. We really appreciate it, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye now.
Thanks, Grace.